Welcome to the Adulting Demystified podcast with your host, Odelia Goldberg. In each episode, we'll have subject matter experts discuss things that most people don't know, but probably should. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on our website, ogoldberglaw.com. Now, here's the host of Adulting Demystified, Odelia Goldberg.
Hello, and thank you so much for joining us today, Danny. I really appreciate you taking the time and kind of sharing with us your wealth of knowledge. As we discussed, the topic today is going to be things that people kind of get wrong when it comes to accounting. As we go out into the universe, there's quite often a lot of misconceptions. I know in my legal profession, I'm constantly telling people that a will doesn't avoid probate and that we can't disinherit a spouse from the estate, and the estate plan doesn't talk about, marital rights. That's handled with the prenup and the postnup. So there are quite a bit of misconceptions that people have when it comes to what I do, estate planning. And I thought, I'm sure across the areas, there's all these types of things that people get wrong. So why don't you share with us a little bit about what you do and a few things that people get wrong in your area?
Sure. So I have a CPA firm. I'm a sole practitioner, and I do primarily accounting for small businesses, and subsequently I do the tax preparations for both the businesses and the individuals. There are other things that we do, but that's, I would say, at least 80% of the work we do. And I specifically deal mostly in the tax preparation. I have a bookkeeping department. So my pet peeves are going to be mostly in tax. And yes, when you said, are there misconceptions, I was going to say, yes, let me count the ways.
Right. When we talk about taxes, people like to say there's one thing for sure, death and taxes. So we got it covered, between me and the death and you and the taxes. This is things that everybody kind of has to experience.
So I have a cartoon on my door that says the difference between death and taxes is that death doesn't get worse every time Congress meets.
Oh, right. That's funny. I like that. So what are a few common misconceptions that people kind of get wrong when it comes to income tax?
So in terms of the entities, I would say that people get really confused with what an LLC is and how an LLC functions.
Yes.
Because as you know, the LLC is a kind of a hybrid entity. There is no LLC tax return, unlike a partnership, which has a partnership return, or a corporation, an S corporation, that have corporation return or S corporation return. The LLC does not.
Right.
So that confuses people. And when I then go ahead and say to them that for tax purposes, the best of both worlds, from a legal standpoint and a tax standpoint, is to create an LLC, but then elect to be treated as an S corporation. So they say, S corporation, but I'm an LLC.
Yeah.
What are you talking about, corporation? So that is one.
Yeah. If I deal a lot with that similar issue, because for me, an LLC is, most people have it, but don't really get it. So I like to say that the IRS doesn't know what an LLC is. It's a creation of the states, and each state has different rules as to what the LLC should look like. Correct. So we have to tell the IRS, hey, IRS, we created this thing. We're calling it an LLC, but for your purposes, I want you to treat it as an S Corp. And that's where that S Corp election filing is. So I do quite a bit of education on the LLC, because people tell me, oh, I have an S Corp. And I'm like, do you? Are you sure? And they're like, yeah, it's an S Corp. And I'm like, that's accounting talk for the IRS. We have to really see if it's an LLC or a corporation that you've told the IRS to treat as an S Corp. The other thing with LLCs that people get wrong is that in Florida, a single member LLC has no liability protection. So it's like you're out there like a lunatic conducting business on your own. So we always want at least 2 members in the LLC to actually benefit from that legal protection. So I do quite a bit of talk about the LLC. So that's a great point. Yeah, a lot of people get that mixed up.
I also always make sure to let them know that the single member LLC, that there is legal precedence in Florida where the single member LLC was pierced and the owner got sued. Yeah. So it's always even a 1% share or 0.5%, just to say that it's multi-member LLC.
Exactly. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go on. What's another misconception? Yeah.
So I was actually going to pick up on something that you said. I was going to say, if I had a penny for every time a client swore that they have an S corporation, only to find out that they thought or they were told, but no one filed the election.
Yeah.
Of course, that blows up in my face when I try to file the return and it gets rejected.
Is there a time where someone sets up the LLC and then has to file that S Corp election filing? Is there a time?
So ideally, there is a 75-day window from the date of incorporation or organization for the LLC, where you should file that election.
Gotcha.
If you didn't, it's fine. There is a late election provision in the code, and there's different ways. The easiest way is if it's within the year, that's almost guaranteed. You could, up to 3 years, you could still come back and try to fix it, but that it gets more complicated at that point. So as long as I know about it, I can file it. I can file the election with the return, the late election with the return, and it's usually fine. I actually have an anecdote. It's funny but sad at the same time. I once went with a client to the IRS, to the office of the IRS here in Plantation, and it was an LLC, and we had filed the election to be treated as an S corporation, and the IRS never responded, and every time we sent the tax return, it kept being rejected, saying that it's not an S corporation. So I'm sitting with the IRS agent, and he looks at the file and he says, "But it's an LLC, it's not an S corporation." I said, maybe he didn't understand me. I said, "No, I understand it is an LLC, but we filed an election, the 2553, we filed the election to be treated as an S corporation." He goes, "No, but the LLC is a partnership." And I'm looking at the guy, and first of all, I was glad that the client was not a brand new client, so he knew that I knew what I was talking about.
Wow.
And I cannot believe that a representative of the IRS doesn't know their own rules and regulations.
Yeah, this stuff is complicated. It's not easy. It is just not, it's not something that we're born with, and it's not something that's taught in school. And it's just one of those things that you kind of have to really get good, proper legal or accounting advice when you set up an entity. Absolutely. It's not intuitive, not even a little. Yeah.
So that's one very common misconception. The other one that happens all the time, and I keep saying I'm going to either record something and just every time they ask me just press play, or put it in writing, and just clients always get confused with the fact that in a partnership or an S corporation, you can take money out of the company. It's called a distribution.
Mm-hmm.
And the part where they get confused is that distributions have no impact on the income of the company and the subsequent taxes that they will have to pay based on the operation of the company that year, the result. They think that every time they take money, that's income, and if they take more money, they're going to pay more taxes, and if they don't, and it doesn't work like that.
Right.
Basically, the distribution is the legal term, or the accounting term would be that the distribution is a balance sheet item, and the taxes are a profit and loss item. But to explain it further, the company has the whatever the revenue, their income, and all the expenses, and you get to the net income, and that's typically the taxable income, and that's what the owners, the partners, or the members, or the shareholders will report on their personal return and pay taxes on. That income typically generates cash for the company if the company didn't reinvest that money into something else, and so it's just sitting in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
That is money available if the owner decides that they don't need that money for the operation, the day-to-day operation of the entity. They're free to take that money as a distribution. They're still going to pay taxes on their income,
Right.
Regardless of whether they take that money or they leave the money in the bank account of the corporation. And every year I need to explain the same thing, sometimes to the same client, over and over.
Well, because when the times people get problematic is when they don't show enough income, when they take so much in distribution and they don't show the IRS that they've also taken an income that they're paying taxes on. That's when it becomes problematic, right? You need to kind of have income that makes sense for you to live on, and then you could take the distribution, and it's kind of that balance sheet item that kind of gets kind of settled later, right? If I'm understanding it correctly.
Kind of. Because, again, the income is the income.
Right.
And if that income generated cash and that cash is sitting in the bank,
yeah,
you can take it. And it won't make a difference. Sometimes they're so scared of taking the money that they leave the money for 1 or 2 or 3 years, and all of a sudden there is like $200,000 in the bank account.
Yeah.
And they don't really, it's not a capital intensive business. They don't need that kind of money in the account. And so they panic because they say, no, if I show in my bank account that I'm depositing $150,000, the IRS is going to think that's income, and they're going to say that. And so, one of these days I'm going to make a recording and just not have to worry about repeating myself over and over and over.
Yep. Very good. When we were talking about LLCs and corporations, one of the things I explain a lot is the idea of double taxation. Where the reason we do the S Corp is so that you don't pay taxes 2 times. Once when the company makes money, and then once when you take it into your own personal account. And I use, examples like McDonald's and Nike, those entities, they make money and they pay taxes. And then when the individual shareholders, whatever business, whoever's involved, managers, employees get paid, they pay taxes on that too. Whereas with a closely held corporation, an S Corp, or, an LLC treated as an S Corp, we'd want to avoid that double taxation. So when the entity makes money, we kind of pass that through our own personal tax return. So I do a lot of education on that. Even though I'm not an accountant, I can't imagine how many times a day you probably give that speech.
Correct. Incidentally, I have to talk about trust and estates also sometimes, even though it's not my area of expertise. But which brings me to something that's also another pet peeve of mine, which is, for some reason, many of the other professions have been segmented. Like, you wouldn't go to a foot doctor and ask him about your heart. Yep. And you wouldn't go to a real estate attorney and ask him about trust and estates, unless, like you specialize in both. Yeah. But for some reason, that hasn't happened in accounting. Yeah. And you go to a CPA and you expect the CPA to know all the tax code and everything. Yeah. And we do the best we can, but I never quite understood why that is so, why that's not segmented as well.
You bring up a good point, because initially when I first purchased my law practices, the attorneys that I purchased their practice were the kind of attorneys that did it all. Back in the day, the attorney they would do, divorces, and then they would do a little bankruptcy on the side and a little personal injury and then your will. And they kind of could. But as we go through, history, I suppose, everything gets so nuanced and there's so much more detail that it's really hard for people to be good at everything. When I refer clients to accountants, I do try to match the subject matter, right? Because you've got 1031 accounting, you've got FERPTA accounting, you've got capital gains tax accounting, you've got income tax, you've got audit accounting. You have so many different, there's some accountants that all they do is set up EIN numbers for non-US citizens, right? So there's so many nuanced types of accounting that it is really challenging to be good at everything. And the idea that you expect one accountant to be able to be a subject matter in everything is just preposterous. I mean, it's almost impossible to find that one person that, you also have the accountants that deal with the IRS in terms of litigation, right? So that's a specialty in and of itself. And it's true that the accounting world doesn't have those types of, also in law, I'm kind of prohibited from saying I specialize in something unless I've actually sat for an exam. And, so there's ways that I can say it. Like I could say my area is focused in transactional law, but I can't say this is my specialty. That would be a problem for the bar. So, I'm kind of restricted from segmenting, even though you have to, because it would be impossible for, an attorney to do it all and do it well.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was going to tell you a bad accounting joke related to.
No, I want to hear it.
Related to the partnerships and the S corporations, which, as you mentioned, are pass-through entities, which means that the income goes directly to the owners of the entity. So a C corp and a 1040, an individual return, go to a bar with an S corp, and they have one drink, and the S corp says, "Excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom." It comes back. They have a second round, and as soon as the S corp finishes the second round, "Excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom." By the third time, the individual looks at the C corp and goes, "What's with this guy?" He goes, "Pass-through entity."
That's cute. That's cute. All the lawyer jokes are not cute, for lawyers, or, it's all like sharks, what would you rather be stuck with, a lawyer or a dragon? The lawyer, the dragon, things
Right.
like that. Yeah.
Many of them are funny, but maybe not to a lawyer.
Not flattering.
Exactly.
That's funny. Are there any other items that you find that, kind of you find yourself repeating to clients, or that most people don't really quite grasp when it comes to accounting?
So maybe this is slightly off topic, but it's somewhat related. And it has to do with the education of the younger generation. Many of them can't write a check. They don't know how to write a check. And the truth is that by now, they can really do without. Now with Zelle and all the Venmos of the world, really writing checks is something of the past almost. Mm-hmm. But even 5 years ago, it wasn't so much like that. And young people, even my children, even you write a check. Oh no, stay away. No, checks, we don't know what that is. And I think that there should be a class in high school of whether accounting / finance / economics, something to prepare them, because they come out and very often they're like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah.
And it would be so beneficial to them to be prepared for that.
When writing a check is part of the problem, right? Because when you write a check, you're supposed to, you get that little ledger book that you write your check number in. And the reason we do that is so that we can reconcile the check, right? So writing the check is a tiny piece of the reconciliation process. So, money coming in and money coming out, so that you could balance your checkbook, right? So that's, straight up bookkeeping. And bookkeeping is probably a lost art, which is why so many people, like what you do, vendor it out. Because even though they don't necessarily write the check, that Venmo, that Zelle, that, whatever it is they're paying, still at the end of the day, you got to reconcile. You got to make sure that the money you gave out is being received by the other guy, and the money that you're supposed to get in is coming in. And so even though it's kind of lost on this younger generation, it's still an important part of running a business, right? You can't escape it. You can't, you can't not reconcile, especially someone like me who has an escrow account with someone else's money, and I'm required by law to reconcile it on a monthly basis. Yeah, you can't escape that. This is something that I have interns every summer. We get 1 or 2 students. They're either high school, college, or law students come in. And the first thing we teach them is how to write a letter, the date, the to, the from, the regarding. And we spend some time doing that because it has to look the right way. Because if I get a legal letter from an attorney and they mix that up, or they don't know what they're doing, right away, I judge them and I say, look at this idiot,
or
right away.
Spelling errors or grammatical errors.
But the format of a letter is so important because it tells the universe, I know what I'm doing. Look at me. I've been around long enough to know how to draft this letter in terms of the, subject, the body, the conclusion, the enclosures, all that is meaningful. Yeah. So I hear you. We spend a lot of time talking about things that should probably be common sense, but really aren't at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
And there is, I would say the software now and the apps are sort of a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, they really, really make it almost idiot-proof to download information from the bank, and it pretty much categorizes things. But it often doesn't do a perfect job, and also leaves things where they don't know, because it's normal. They see somebody's name, they have no idea what the payment was for.
Yeah.
And so the people who don't know much about bookkeeping, but are very good with technical stuff and computers and technology, so they think, okay, I have this app and it's going to do everything for me, and then they send me the report at the end of the year, and it's like, what in the world is that? So
Yeah, I definitely help out by the reconciliations. It's much easier to see the picture. And then also, how much money you spend in marketing, how much money is still outstanding. You could run reports that help you manage your business and actually, see the income go up, see the.
Sure, you need to be able to analyze your financials and see where you can tweak your firm and improve your company.
Yeah.
And that comes maybe more than half comes from really understanding the financials.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, my son, for his undergraduate, he majored in accounting, but then he went to law school.
Oh, yeah?
And I said to him, your choices were perfect. I said, it doesn't matter what you do in your life, even if you decide to sell widgets on the beach.
Right.
The fact that you'll be able to read financial statements,
Yeah.
and you can read a contract and know what it talks about, you will run circles around your competition.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. My undergrad is in biology, and then I got an MBA through IBM, and then I have the law degree. So each one of those fields was so different, that I would be sitting there. I remember the first days of class, and I'm like, what are they talking about? It's just a totally different world, going from biology to accounting to law. It's just a completely different.
Funny you say that, because my other son, his undergraduate was in biochemistry, and he just graduated this year from law school.
Oh, yeah?
So he has a similar background to you.
Are either of them lawyers?
Yeah, both.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, they both work in law. Well, the younger one just started. He graduated in May, and then took the bar, which he thankfully passed, and now he's working for a law firm.
Nice. Is your other son, the biochemical, is he planning on taking the patent bar? Because he can sit for the patent bar with those.
So that was the idea originally, that he felt that because he had the biochemistry knowledge, that he could work in patent law and maybe work for the pharmaceutical industry.
That's what I did, just because I could. I did it. It was hard, but I did it. That's awesome. Well, we only have a few more minutes, so I want to give you the opportunity to tell people where they could find you. If somebody has more questions, how can they reach you? And tell them, what your area of subject matter, what your perfect client would be.
Okay. So the first way to reach me, I see that on my screen, I see my name. I imagine that will follow through. So if you put an @ sign in between my first and my last name, and then it's .tax, TAX, which is what I do, taxation. That's my email. So that's one of the easiest ways to contact me. It would be Daniel@Bengio.tax. Our website is Bengio.tax, so same thing. My ideal customer is a small business owner who needs hand-holding when we start from the incorporation phase when they're first talking about creating the entity. So we tell them about the LLC and the S Corporation and all that, and hopefully most of them do follow our advice, and so we can coach them throughout the process and the growth of their company. And I like that. I take pleasure in being able to impart the wisdom that I've accumulated over more than 30 years in the industry, and see them succeed, hopefully. So that would be my ideal client. We also we deal with retailers or wholesalers. That would be one big portion, and professionals. Those would be the two areas that we work a lot with. Also, as you know, and I'm sure our listeners picked up by my accent, I wasn't born in the U.S., and I speak 4 languages, and as a result, I tend to deal with foreigners quite a lot, whether it's foreigners investing in the U.S. or U.S. people having an investment abroad. Like you were mentioning the FERPTA. I've prepared the withholding certificate, which allows the attorney to not have to send the money to the IRS until we know how much the IRS is going to want. And so I do deal with that quite a bit.
Awesome. So maybe we can have a follow-up conversation about specifically foreign, clients and some challenges and some tools and tricks of the trade. I think that would be a great follow-up conversation for you and I.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yay.
You know where to find me.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you, Danny. I really appreciate you taking the time and speaking with us today. I think you're amazing. You know that. You have a wealth of knowledge, and I always feel confident whenever you and I cross paths. I think it's always magical.
Thank you. I think highly of you too. And I guess that shows in the fact that we refer clients to each other as well.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't if I didn't trust you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you.
Yeah. All right.
You've been tuning in to the Adulting Demystified podcast with your host, Odelia Goldberg. You should never get legal advice from a podcast. Please don't do anything stupid and ruin it for the rest of us. You deserve to have your own legal advice from a legal professional. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on our website, oldgoldberglaw.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.